this is Chris Schwartz. I'm one of the onboarders here at LegalServer, and I'm also the team leader of Community Empowerment. The Community Empowerment team tries to speak with each of our groups once a year or so. During those Community Empowerment meetings, we try to point out any new tools or features that have come out that site administrators may or may not be aware of. And that way we can teach them about those new features and we can enable them if they'd like them on their own site. It's quite hard to keep up with the new features that are being rolled out of LegalServer. Even with Ron Wilhoit's release notes, which come out on a weekly basis, it can be difficult to keep up with all of the new tools and features that LegalServer is developing. I know that when I was a site administrator and a managing attorney, it was quite hard to keep up with all of the new cool things that were coming out. So today I've picked a selection of some of the tools that groups seem to be most excited by and or use the most that have come out in the last year or so. Almost all of them are immediately available or in semi-open beta testing, meaning that you can probably join our beta testing if you'd like to. You'll be able to turn each of these tools on yourself or to request that we enable them for you on your site. Some of the tools have an additional cost requirement. I'll be sure to call those out as they come up. This isn't meant to be a comprehensive list of all features that LegalServer has. Please see the help site for all of our release notes and a list of all of the optional modules that we can enable for you. For each of the tools that we review, I'll let you know if there's an additional cost, if it's something you can enable on your own, or if you need to contact support to do it. And if a feature is in beta, there may be an associated cost with it in the future once it's in general production. If that happens and you happen to be using that feature and you don't want to assume the cost, you can always have us turn that feature back off for you. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'd like to mention is that we now have an extensions page in LegalServer that is available for each of the site administrators to view. This page used to be a part of System Metrics, but we wanted to have a place where site administrators can come to see what features are currently on their site. So this is now a solo standalone page under your big admin button. Let's take a look at how to get there. We'll come to a demo site here, and we're going to go to our large admin button, and we're simply going to type in extensions. Here is our extensions page. Under Enabled Add-on Modules and Integrations, on the left hand, you can see the name of each of the modules that we have available in LegalServer, and on the right, you can see a red X for no, this feature is not enabled on the current site, or a green check arrow for yes. A couple of things to point out about this page. We're always rolling out new features. Not every new feature that needs to be enabled is listed on this page immediately. Some of them take some time to land here. You'll also run into some modules that you might see are indicated as being enabled on your site that aren't actually enabled on your site. This might be because we're testing them in the background or because we don't have the requisite system hooked up yet to accurately read whether or not you have that module. That happens often with newer modules, but we're working to get this page to have more accurate information on it. In general, though, it's a useful place to come to if you're wondering if you have things like advanced grants management enabled, or if you have your Dropbox enabled or Google Shared Drive enabled on your site, or some of the other features we'll talk about today, like Microsoft Office for the web, or some of our machine learning tools. We're working hard on making this page as accurate as possible going forward, and this is really in the initial stages of planning. But again, it's a good place to come to see some information about what modules may be available to you. In the future, we're looking to do things like give you some additional information about each module and maybe even let you request the modules that you don't have enabled right from this page. So an important page to know about and add to your toolbox as a LegalServer site administrator. All right, next up, let's talk about Office for the web. You may have noticed that the documents that you keep in LegalServer have gotten some new icons next to them. Those are some new options that are available to everyone. Some of them, like the magnifying glass, will let you preview documents from within LegalServer with a full screen view, which wasn't available a few years ago. You can do things like preview PDFs and pictures and documents with LegalServer now using that magnifying glass. Some of the other icons will let you convert certain documents into other document formats, like you can convert a text file into a PDF. Those new features don't need to be enabled. Office for the web does need to be enabled on your site. Let's take a look at what Office for the web looks like and what it does. Office for the web is going to give you an additional action, an additional icon here. And you'll be able to see it if you hover over these icons. It'll be this little Microsoft Word icon, and when you hover over it, it will say Open in Office for the web. Office for the web is accessible for text files in docx format and RTF format and other text formats at the present. And if we click that icon, Office for the web will launch. Note that if this is your first time using Office for the web, you'll have to click on a disclaimer saying that you're authorized to use Microsoft software on your machine first, and then you'll launch into Office for the web. Notice that I can now edit this document in real time. I didn't have to download it. I didn't have to open it in a local word processing software package. I've launched directly into Microsoft Office for the web. Some people have asked if we can launch into Microsoft Office the desktop version, and that's not currently available. We have to use the web application. But this is very useful. As we make changes to this document, it's being saved in real time, and those changes will be saved on the case, so we no longer have to worry about downloading a document, making a change to it, and then re-uploading that document and deleting the former version. All of that editing can be done with documents that are stored in LegalServer. A frequent question that comes up is, should I enable Microsoft Office for the web if we're using the SharePoint integration? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on what other documents you're storing within LegalServer differently than the SharePoint integration. The SharePoint integration gives you similar functionality where you can launch into a document and make changes. But of course, those documents are stored within SharePoint, and the Office for the web documents, in order for them to be accessible by the new tool that we're demonstrating today, those documents need to live in LegalServer rather than in SharePoint. So depending on how you manage documents on your site, Office for the web may or may not be useful for you, even if you do have the SharePoint integration. To enable Office for the web, you want to come to the Big Admin tab, and you want to navigate to Document Settings. There are two primary options that you need to make sure are enabled here in order for Office for the web to be accessible on your site. The first is to show Ajax document lists. You need to make sure that's enabled. And that might already be enabled on your site. And the next one, if you scroll down just a little bit here, is enable Office for the web. It's as simple as that. You don't need to contact support. Make sure both of those options say yes, click on continue, and there's no further setup required. All right, the next feature I want to talk about is case note copy. You might find yourself in a situation where you want to enter one note on multiple cases at the same time. This is actually a popular request that we've gotten over the years, and we've been able to build out a system now that will enable you, as you're entering a note, to tell LegalServer that you would also like to see that note copied to other cases at the same time. One important limitation here is that this feature cannot copy case notes that were entered with time or that were entered on a time slip. So those of you who use our shortcut methods to enter both a case note and time at the same time, those case notes currently cannot be copied over to other cases because of how they're associated with time slips. We might be trying to develop a method in the back that will allow those notes to be copied in the future, but I have nothing to announce at this time. Documents attached to notes are not copied over. So if you want to add a note with a document to many different cases, you can certainly use the case note copy feature to have the note go to different cases, but you'll have to manually copy those documents over. There's no additional cost for this feature. To have it enabled, though, you have to file a support ticket. It's not on your site already, unlike extensions and Office for the web. The next feature that I want to talk about is note pinning. We've added a new rich text editor to LegalServer, and just last month or so, we had it turned on by default. So at this point in time, all of the case notes that you enter should allow you access to the rich text editor, which gives you some additional options for formatting text as you're entering a case note. But you'll also have the option of turning on case note pinning. Case notes are generally displayed in reverse chronological order, with the newest notes appearing at the top of the case note list as you view them. And what note pinning is going to let you do is choose notes that you find to be important that were entered earlier in the case and pin them so that regardless of how many subsequent notes you add to the case, the pinned notes are always going to be displayed at the top of that list when you're sorted in reverse chronological order. Okay, let's take a look at the rich text editor that's currently on your site. If you see it already, then you don't have to do anything additional. So if you come to your add a note process on any of your cases, and you get to the body of the note, these bars at the top of the screen, this is the rich text editor here. You have options for formatting your text with different styles, including bold and italics and underlining and strike through. You can also add highlights to your text now. You have an undo and a redo button. You can also set text to header format if you choose to, and add paragraph breaks. You can add quotations and lists. You can add hyperlinks and anchors, and you can even add tables to your notes now. If you don't see the rich text editor options available on your site, there are a few things to check that I want to review very quickly with you. The first is that you're using our case note list element, which is a block. So the case note list is a block and it looks like this. If you're using our earlier case notes element, which displays notes in an all yellow format and they're automatically expanded, the note editor and note pinning doesn't work with that older version of our case notes. So you have to be using the case note list block element in order for these features to be enabled. That's the first thing to check. Then we'll come to the big admin button and we'll head over to site settings. If we scroll down a little bit here, we can see that site administrators have control over using the rich text editor for notes on their site. Site administrators can switch off the rich text editor for their entire site if they choose to, but currently the default setting for the rich text editor is on or yes. If you'd also like to enable pinned notes, you need to scroll down a little bit further and make sure enabled pinned notes is also checked as yes. Coming back into the case, note pinning does exactly what it says it does. You'll have a little thumbtack here on each of your notes that you can click. Once you click them, the thumbtack will turn red, and when you reload the page, your new pinned note will be at the top of your case note list, regardless of the chronological order it was entered in. You can have multiple pinned notes as well. One other item to mention, we've given each user the ability to individually control whether or not the rich text editor is enabled for them, even if you as a site admin enable it site-wide. One of the reasons for that is for accessibility. It might be easier for them to access LegalServer using whatever device they prefer if the rich text editor is not enabled for them. And every user, under their user button, My Preferences, can come in and scroll down and determine if the rich text editor is right for them or if they'd prefer to switch it off, even if you have it turned on site-wide. The next thing we'll speak about today is the Flowblock. At this point in time, I think we've evangelized the usefulness of this new way of summarizing case information sufficiently enough that you've probably all heard about the Flowblock in LegalServer. It's been out in the wild for more than a year now. It's on your live and your demo site. There's nothing that needs to be enabled for you to begin creating the Flowblock. We're not going to take too much time looking at how to construct the Flowblock today, but there are a couple of points that I want to make about it. The first is, as we've been mentioning, Flowblock will be one of the primary ways that we display information in the next version of LegalServer, LegalServer 5. Therefore, we recommend that you become familiar with using the Flowblock and that you also give your users the opportunity to become familiar with the Flowblock. One of the ways that you can do that is you can create a Flowblock on an optional profile view that your users can switch to and switch away from back to their standard way of looking at cases now, probably using our snapshot, so that they have an opportunity to test it and get a feel for it and give you some feedback on what information should be displayed in it. There's no cost for the Flowblock. It's currently live and available on your live site and your demo site, and we have a good tutorial in our help documentation that will teach you how to build one or more Flowblocks for your site. One thing that we found that makes people reluctant to switch over to the Flowblock is that they believe they'll lose the feature on the sidebar snapshot of being able to copy an email address. And I have some good news for folks today. The newest improvement we've made to the Flowblock is a clickable case email address. Let's take a look at that. Here I am on a case in LegalServer that still displays our snapshot sidebar view. The feature that I was mentioning, being able to copy the email address to the clipboard with a click of your mouse, is here and is apparently beloved by many site administrators. I'm actually one of them. Initially, when our Flowblock was designed, we did not add that feature to the Flowblock. But since we've gotten so many requests and so many people have mentioned that one of the reasons they haven't converted to the Flowblock yet is because that feature is missing, we were actually able to improve its functionality. Now, when you add the case email field to your Flowblock, not only will you be able to click on the address to copy it to your clipboard to then add to an email, if your browser supports the functionality, you could launch directly into your default email program with the email address of the case already filled out in the to field. To add this clickable email address to your Flowblock, you simply want to go to your profile where your Flowblock lives, open up your Flowblock, and the element that you're looking for is called case email. Make sure that you add the case email with the uppercase E. The case email with the lowercase e is our old system field that is not interactable. Once you've added case email to the Flowblock, you could move it to where you want it to live in the Flowblock and then save your work, and the result will be a clickable email address. One of the more useful functions in LegalServer is being able to take a case that's with information that's already been entered into the system and copy that information over into a new case using either Create New Case for Clients or Quick Case Copy. Over the last year or so, we've also developed a copy feature to create a new case not for the client as our old copy features do, but for family members that have been added to the client's case. So now, if you add Mama Jones to Mr. Jones's case, and Mama Jones has her own information that lives on that case as she is a non-adverse party / family member, you can set up LegalServer so that you can create a case for Mama Jones via a process just like you would with Create New Case for Clients. A little bit of setup is required here, and let's take a look at how that works in the background. Before we create the Create Case for Family Member process in LegalServer and add it to our Actions menu, there's information on our help site how to do that. I want to point out some of the settings that site administrators should pay attention to as they're preparing to use this functionality. They want to come to the Big Admin button and go to Process Settings and scroll down to the section called Case Copy Settings. Those of you who are using Case Copy will likely have some of this information already filled out. Those of you who haven't used Case Copy before or who aren't familiar with the process should make some adjustments to this section first. For example, by default, the Case Copy functions will only work on cases that are no older than 30 days. You probably want to increase that number, both for the basic Case Copy function and the Create Case for Family Member function. There are some other options under the Case Copy function that may interest you, like whether or not you can create notes. But an important concept here is that any custom fields that you've created on your site that you want to transfer from the case you're copying to the new case need to be listed under this Case Copy Settings section of your Process Settings page. If they're not listed here, any custom fields you've created will not copy over to the new case. The reason that this concept is important to get familiar with is because if we continue to scroll down, in the next section, Create Case from Family Settings, we're going to be asked to make the same kinds of decision. Matter fields, these are the custom fields from your cases. You need to make a determination as to which custom fields you want to copy over. There will be some differences in what you're copying over from the primary case to your family member case that are going to require you to make some determinations here. For example, copying an old case to a new case, you probably don't need a field such as good stories where the attorneys were clever or skilled. This is a field that really pertains to the main case and isn't going to pertain to the new case we're creating for a family member, so we want to get rid of that field. You have the shortcuts below I've got quite a few custom fields, as you can see. You've got shortcuts below to select all of your custom fields or to select none of your custom fields, in which case you can make the determination of what fields to bring over one by one, whatever works better for you. In addition, those of you who are using the Persons module to capture additional custom fields on your non-adverse parties will need to bring those fields that you've built on the Persons module over as well as part of this process of setting up your Create Case for Family Member settings. Once you do that and you create a process with the new Create Case for Family Member block on it, you'll be able to add that to your Actions menu, and you can create a case for a family member as easily as you can create a new case for your client. A subtle but very useful new addition to the tools that are available to you in LegalServer is the Actions dropdown. The Actions dropdown will let you create action shortcuts for your current assignments list views for cases and outreaches, your upcoming events list views, and your calendar events list view. And these shortcuts will let you circumvent the need to actually be in a case when you perform certain actions, like closing a case or adding a case note or adding time. Your actions will take place in a pop-up window, and you will remain in place without needing to navigate away from whatever screen you were looking at. This feature is available for no cost, and it's available right now if you know where to look in your list views. So here we are on my homepage, and I'm going to take a look at my assignments here, one of the list views where the actions dropdown is available. And if I scroll down a little bit, you can see all the way over to the right that I have a column called action dropdowns on my list view. And if I navigate to any case and click the plus icon, I have a number of different actions that I can perform without entering the case. For example, I could launch into a shortcut that lets me add a time slip related to that case, or I can even begin my case closing process, or if the case is closed, I can reopen the case, begin the reopen process from here. I think it would be useful if I could also add case notes without navigating away from this list view. So how would I add a new action to the actions dropdown or enable the actions dropdown to begin with? What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the back end of the profile. And I'm not quite deep enough yet. I need to be within the tab block so that I can access the list view element. So I'll use the shortcut here to edit the items that are on this tab block. Then I'll identify the list view I want to work with here, which is my current assignments, and I'll open this up. And we should see some familiar faces as we scroll down here. We've got our enabled columns and our disabled columns. We don't need anything here right now. We're going to continue to scroll. I've enabled default filters on this list view, but we don't need anything with them. We don't need to adjust them right now. I'm going to continue to scroll. And right under my default filters, I have a check mark that says Show Actions Dropdown. I want to make sure that that's checked. Then I have a list of processes, just like I do on my Actions menu, where I can come in and I can remove or add new processes to my heart's content. Here's a list of the processes that I can add. These are all auxiliary processes on my site. And certainly I have one for adding a case note. So I'm going to select that process. I'm going to make sure that it has a label. If it doesn't have a label, even though I've added the process, I'm not going to be able to access it. The label, of course, does not have to read the same if I don't want it to. Then I'm going to save my work. I'll navigate back to my home page and back to my assignments list view here. And now for any of the cases on this list view, I can use my actions dropdown to add a case note without needing to enter the case. This could save me a lot of time if I need to enter a bunch of case notes at once, or a bunch of time slips at once, or close a bunch of cases, or update a number of calendar events. Hopefully you'll find great use for the actions dropdown that'll give your users a shortcut to have them hopping around the site a little bit less. Automated workflows. Very frequently, we'll get a request from someone who wants to automate a certain process within LegalServer. Some items in the Case Matter module can be automated by guided navigation, but we often get requests to automate things like sending a survey out to clients when a case has been closed, or reminding a volunteer when they've been assigned to a case. Automated workflows is an additional module that's available for an additional cost. You can check it out on our help site and then file a support ticket if you think it's right for you, and we'll get a work order out to you. But let's take a look at a simple workflow and see how it works. Okay, here I am on a demo site with workflows enabled. I'm going to come over to the big admin button, and I'm going to navigate to workflows. Workflows is a separate module in LegalServer that lives under the big admin button. And let's say that our goal here is to make sure that every time a case's disposition changes to closed, that we send out a survey via external forms to our clients to see what their feedback is on how we performed on a case, on how they did in the case. Let's create a new workflow by coming to the plus icon on the list view here. And we'll go ahead and name this. We'll call it Send Closing Survey. We can leave it inactive for now until we're ready to activate it, or we can go ahead and make it active right away. Unlike guided navigation, Workflows is going to let us automate certain actions on a number of different modules. We're also continuing to develop the Workflows module, so you should see it available in other areas of LegalServer over time as well. But here we're going to be in the Case Matter module because our goal is to trigger an event based on a change in disposition. Disposition is one of the system field values in the Case Matter module. And that's the first thing that we'll need to set. What's our trigger here? Our trigger in Workflows can be a number of different things. You can read more about these on our help site, but I'll go over some of them here. We can trigger a workflow when the value in any field has changed, when a certain amount of time has elapsed since a certain event, like the intake date or the close date or the open date. It can trigger when a new case is created from a pending case transfer or when a case has been copied. For our purposes today, we're going to pick the trigger disposition change. Once we pick disposition change, we need to choose whether we want this action that we're going to define below to happen anytime the disposition changes, or only when the disposition changes to a certain value. And note that we can pick multiple values here. Maybe we want to send it when a case opens and then also closes, but our assignment was to have the survey sent when the case disposition changes to close here. We can include a logic filter. We might want to filter the kinds of cases that this trigger works for. Maybe it's only cases involving a veteran or cases in a certain legal problem code. Once we have our trigger set up, it's time for us to program in the different steps of the workflow. What do we want LegalServer to do here? In our example, we've got one simple step. We want LegalServer to send out a survey. But we can see here that there are a number of different options on the workflow that we can have triggered by the change in value of disposition to closed. We can have LegalServer add a note, or create an alert, or a deadline, or a task, or to launch a process. Here, we're going to use the Send Survey step. And once we click on Send Survey, we can pick the method that the survey is sent by. I don't actually have a survey process on this site to show you, but if I had a number of different surveys, we could pick which one from here. We can set our expiration date, and also we can put in the message subject and the message body, depending on how we're going to contact the person. If we're going to contact the person to fill out the survey by text, then we don't need the message subject. Once we've filled all of this out and we've clicked continue and we've got an active workflow in there, whenever a case changes its disposition to closed, that survey would be sent out pursuant to our process to the client who is related to the case here. So if your practice involves sending surveys out to clients when a case has been closed, using the automated workflows module, you could automate the process almost entirely. The Contractor Module is a significant new development driven by our public defender groups that work with counsel and investigators that need to be paid for their work for taking on these court-appointed cases. There are also civil groups who have found great use out of the Contractor Module. The Contractor Module is really a full invoicing system within LegalServer. Contractors are added as users, similar to the way you'd add a pro bono user. And then you would add additional information about that contractor to their user record, including what languages they could support, what services they provide, and what their services cost. Contractors can then be matched with the cases that they might provide their services on by the criteria that you listed above, what their practice areas are, what languages they speak, and what services they provide. They can be assigned to those cases through LegalServer and sent a message that they're assigned and what work they're authorized to do. Once a service has been performed, the contractor can submit an invoice to your organization directly through LegalServer. You can then track the service completion and your payment of them from within LegalServer itself. Everything is reportable. There's a host of other features and views to make tracking contracted work in LegalServer both accurate and expedient. There's an additional cost for this feature. Take a look at our help site, help.legalserver.org, to see if it might be something that you're interested in. If you'd like to see a demo of our contractor module, or you'd like to order our contractor module, please file a support ticket. One of our newest ways of editing information at once is editing bulk client information. This is still in beta testing, but once you have it enabled, you'll be able to bulk edit client information on cases. Those of you who want to correct a client's address across that client's many different cases, or you want to correct their gender or their phone number or other information kept in system fields across many of their cases at once, might find this feature very useful. You can also choose which cases you edit. So if John Doe has 10 cases and you would like to change their phone number on only 5 of those cases, you'll be able to do so with the Edit Bulk Client Information feature. This feature is currently in beta, but you can request it by filing a support ticket. This is one of the features I mentioned earlier that are in beta with no current cost. If this costs something going forward, we'll notify you, and you can choose either to add it to your account or to disable use of it. And last but not least, one of our most popular requests over the years is the ability to perform certain mathematical expressions within LegalServer to make the data that you collect a little bit more interactive. Formula fields is a new way to interact with your data in LegalServer. Now you can perform that math. You can make date calculations as well with date fields, and you can perform other useful mathematical functions that you'll find on our help site article about formula fields. We're going to look at a very simple example today, keeping in mind that one of the reasons I went to law school is because I was told that there would be no math, but here we are. Let's take a look at a very simple example. Formula fields needs to be enabled. It is no longer in beta testing, but it is a feature that we're adding new tools and new formulas to. So you'll see increased functionality over time, but you do have to contact us via support in order to have it enabled on your site. You're going to navigate to the big admin button, and Formula Fields actually lives under Custom Field Management. Once they're enabled, you'll have a tab called Custom Formula Fields. Now, before we create our formula, I'm going to come into a case very briefly here. Let's go into Charlie's case, and we'll scroll down a little bit. And I've got 2 custom monetary fields here, medical debt and medical debt discharged. If we were actually building these features out, we might find these more useful to put into some other function here at LegalServer, maybe something like a service where we can collect a number of different transactions per case. But for our purposes today, we're going to go very simply here and put these 2 fields right in the case matter module. Let's say there's a debt of $50,000. And so far, we've been able to discharge $23,000. Now, I would like to run a report across all of my cases that does the math between those 2 columns for me. I could certainly currently sum up using the summation function that has been in LegalServer for as long as I know on reports to sum up all of the medical debt across all of my cases and all of the medical debt discharged across all of my cases. But what I haven't been able to do up to this point, unless I got some help using the developer functions, is to do the math between these 2 fields to find out how much debt remains after the amount that we've had discharged. Now that we have our two object fields in LegalServer, we can create a formula using them. Very simple one here. Let's come in and add a new formula. Formula fields can exist across these different modules. You can have formula fields in services. You can have formula fields on outreaches as well. And we're going to begin to design our formula here. So the first operand, the first field that we want is medical debt. We're going to add the second operand, which is medical debt discharged. Now we need to pick the operator between them. What are we doing here? We want to come down to our mathematical operators and click on subtraction. And that will give us the formula to calculate the field that we're looking for here. Medical debt minus medical debt discharged. Now we can name our field. Let's call it remaining med debt. And we'll click continue. The field that we created is going to be available in our different modules, so we can just stick it on the case profile if we choose to. But let's come over to reports and take a look at how that might impact our reports here. Here's a very simple report I put together earlier. And without our formula fields, all that this report is showing is it's showing me any case that has a medical debt value. And it's also showing me the amount of medical debt discharged in each case. You can see at the bottom of each column, I've got the summation for the total amount of medical debt across all of my cases and the total amount of debt discharged across all of my cases. But what I'm missing are the individual differences, the medical debt remaining under each individual case and then across my whole site. So I'm going to come into Edit. And I'm going to go to Advanced Add Columns. And I'm going to look for the formula field that I created, which was remaining medical debt. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my report. And it really is as simple as that. Here are the calculations for each of our different rows. And if we click on the summation icon here, that'll give us a summation of all the remaining medical debt across our entire site. So formula fields are powerful. They have lots of different functionality that we won't go into today, but you can review the help documentation. And once again, you can have formula fields enabled for you with an email to support. There's no additional cost. Thank you for joining us today. Also, thank you for your ideas and your feedback about LegalServer and about the features that you would find useful in LegalServer. As you can see, we listen to you and we really build out those features. Special thanks to those of you who seek out grants or otherwise procure funds to help us develop those new features, which, as you can see, we then try to make available to everyone. If you have a new feature in mind, please let us know about it. If you're serious and you're committed, we can develop a project plan and get you an estimate, and you can build something that'll be available eventually to all LegalServer sites. If you have any questions about anything that you've seen today, or if you'd like to set up a community empowerment call so that we can show you more about how to enable these features, you can either come to office hours, you can contact me, C. Schwartz at LegalServer.org, or you can write to support@LegalServer.org if any of the features you saw today you'd like to enable. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.